Supervisor, Manu Koenig. And it's clear by the number of people in this room that it's an important topic to the entire neighborhood. And I want to thank everyone who helped get the word out about this meeting, and thank all of you for your passion for our community and for coming out tonight. All right, well, we're here tonight obviously to talk about Thurber Lane and Soquel Drive, the affordable housing project that's been proposed for this lovely site that you all drive by, I think, every day. And it's currently a nice pumpkin patch. So what we're going to do tonight is talk about the overview of the project that's been proposed, the current timeline, background on how we got to this place, why we're looking at a project that, I mean, honestly, this is the largest project proposed in the unincorporated area of Santa Cruz County. So just actually a little background on that. There are 4 cities, incorporated cities within Santa Cruz County, and then there's the unincorporated area. So if you live in the city, you have a city council. If you're in the incorporated area, which we're in here, you only have the county supervisor. So we'll talk about how we got here, the background of the housing crisis, state laws, the county housing element, why a project is being proposed specifically here at this site, why not downtown Santa Cruz or Capitola, the resources available at this site in terms of traffic, water, sewer, fire, kind of what to expect next, and then hopefully there's plenty of time for questions. Is that better? Sorry, all right, I'll go as loud as possible. Plenty of time for your questions and suggestions at the end, because that is why we're here, is to make this project the best it can possibly be. All right, so the site itself is 6.26 acres. The zoning is community commercial and residential flex. You can see the community commercial is the area down there along the Soquel Drive Thurber intersection, that darker brown. And then residential flex is our highest density residential zoning, and it is the upper part of the lot. The total allowable acres in both residential flex and actually commercial zoning, if there's consider that mixed use when you put housing in commercial areas. And you can do 45 units per acre. And so this site is actually eligible for 281 units. If a developer were to take advantage of state density bonus laws to the maximum amount, which allows for an 80% bonus above that 281, they can theoretically get up to 505 units on this site.
Is that taking up Winkle Farm Park?
Sorry, I'm going to take questions at the end, sir, just to maintain decorum. I'll try to get this to as quickly as possible. When we take questions at the end, happy to form a queue, and I'll give you the mic. It is not taking up Winkle Farm Park. You can see Winkle Farm Park off there to the upper right. It is borders this property kind of right where the tree line, and there is this urban arroyo that goes down the middle of the site that is roughly 2 acres. The project's proposal includes 181 residential units, as well as 2 managers units for a total of 183, actually. It includes 5 total buildings, 1 3-story building, 2 4-story buildings, 2 5-story buildings, which have some renderings there on the right. The project is proposed to be 100% affordable. I can get into the complexity of what exactly that means. And 273 parking spaces, or approximately 1.5 per unit. The affordability calculations are a little bit complex. Basically, the project would be divided into 4 different income levels, all based on the area median income, which is about $105,000 per household. Is the area median income. The project would provide affordable units to people at 70% of the area median income, 60%, 50%, and 30%. And then within those income levels, to be considered affordable, the unit has to cost no more than 30% of someone's gross income. And so that's how you end up with the rental amounts that you see here at the bottom, which would range from $1,000 for a 1-bedroom for the lowest income level, all the way up to $3,000 for a 3-bedroom at the highest income level. So the project timeline so far, we actually do have more people than when this was first aired at a community meeting back in April 29th. The developer held a community meeting back then at the Congregational Church in Soquel. Saw many of you there. The first formal plan submission to the county was actually very recently. It was August 26th. And there was a few design changes between April and August. Then I started to hear from you at my office hours in September, so I started sending out communications September 13th to the Thurber Soquel Benson neighborhood, and then October 3rd to pretty much every email that I have in my newsletter list, about 14,000 people. And here we are, October 10th at a community meeting. The project has, as I mentioned, submitted a formal application August 26th. At this point in time, it's deemed incomplete. There's a number of questions that the county has about various elements. The biotic report is still under review. We're still determining whether additional environmental analysis, CEQA, California Environmental Quality Analysis, would be necessary. And the traffic study has not yet been submitted. So still really at the earlier stages of this submission. The sort of fastest possible timeline would probably be that an application was completed by the end of this year, and that a planning commission hearing was held early next year. Would be a public hearing, and that, if everything lines up, it could certainly extend past that later into next year if we reach these timelines. Some of the updates between the April 29th proposal and the August 30th actual submission is that the height was reduced by a story along Soquel Drive, Thurber Lane. So this is looking, if we're standing on Thurber, looking at the project sort of out, and the corner is here on my right-hand side, and on this view where Soquel Drive comes through. So the project reduced a story there. Originally it was 5 stories right at the corner of Thurber and Soquel. The developer proposed 4 stories with a step down to 3 stories at the end of the building to try to make it meet the existing neighborhood a little bit better. A commercial component was also included at the corner. You can see that there at the corner of Thurber and Soquel. That's a proposed 1,800 square foot commercial space. That could be anything from a bakery to honestly whoever wants to ultimately rent the space. Additionally, we're looking at putting in a walking trail connection to Winkle Park. The applicant and the county are talking about how we potentially do this, who will ultimately manage this area, whether it's the county or the development itself. There are still 5-story buildings, as I mentioned, but they've been pushed more towards the internal part of the site so that they're not up against any particular existing buildings. They're also separated by parking lots from the edge of the site, again, to avoid excessive shadows or impact. So those are some of the changes that we've seen so far. I heard some snickers at adding a commercial space and, walking path, big deal. Why bother trying to integrate this project into the neighborhood? Well, I could say, look down the street. We've got a 9-acre affordable housing project there, and it's fenced off. If you're a member of the community, you don't get to interact with that 9 acres on Soquel at all. And so I would suggest that's not a particularly good way to have a project integrated into the neighborhood. So we can definitely do better than that. All right, so why are we even talking about projects of this size? Well, first of all, let's just review some of the basic numbers. You can't actually make this stuff up. I'm sure the idea of $3,000 a month for a 3-bedroom sounds high. Reality is the average rent in our community is $4,000 for a 2-bedroom. Santa Cruz County has been named the least affordable housing market in the entire country 2 years in a row now. We were just ahead of San Francisco a couple of years ago, and now we're a lot ahead of San Francisco. That means that 70% of renters spend more than 30% of their gross income on rent. That's gross income compared to take-home pay. That's really more like they're spending more than half of all their take-home pay on rent. The average home price in this neighborhood is $1.3 million. I'm sure if you just moved to the neighborhood, you feel that. And with a 20% down payment at today's interest rates, it would take a household income of over $400,000 to afford an average price home in our community. Santa Cruz, the result of this is really a dwindling workforce. I can tell you the county, this is the biggest problem facing your local government. It means less firefighters, it means less nurses, it means we can't fill positions in behavioral health, it means we can't even fill positions in our planning department to get even your basic one-room models approved fast enough. Santa Cruz is the fastest aging county in the entire state. We're aging twice as fast as the state average. So, if we don't add some housing, there's literally not going to be people to keep the town running, not going to be people to keep the water sewer system running, let alone doctors to see and take care of it. So the state's response to this housing crisis, which is really statewide, we are the worst, but statewide problem, has been law after law after law after law after law to streamline housing production. Now the governor here just the end of last month, you can see him standing with the sign that says more housing, more accountability. What more accountability means is less local control. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. And so that's basically what, the reason we don't have a whole lot of housing is because meetings like this have happened over the last 40 years. And every time, your elected official has walked out of this meeting, as I would too here tonight, and said, I am going to do whatever I can to respect the community's wishes and make the project more in line with what they want. And that meant smaller projects, or less projects, or no project at all. And that's why we got here today, and why the state's response has been, okay, it's not going to be your job anymore. We're going to take control of the situation and basically force regions to accept this and build this housing. And so they've done that in a number of ways. SB 7, for example, basically requires regions to plan for more housing, to zone for it, and basically eliminates local government's ability to appeal those numbers. The AB 3194 says that if a project is proposed that meets the local zoning, then it must be built, basically. We can't find one reason or another in local government not to approve the project. And then projects like, or bills like SB 35, basically again reduce the power of local jurisdictions to delay housing development through any discretionary review process. So, I mean, the result of this is the state is acting as our housing coach, referee, and scorekeeper all in one. And enforcer, yeah, that's absolutely right. Of course, then this even goes to basically throwing our local zoning code and build out the window. So this project is 5 stories. The height limit that the Board of Supervisors approved just a couple of years ago was 3 stories. It doesn't matter because state law says that affordable projects like this can have waivers and concessions, which means basically that they can be excused from one law or another within the code. So as far as we can tell, they're going through the application that was submitted, some of the waivers and concessions. This project is considered, a reduction in the total amount of commercial space that will be required along Soquel Drive there with our commercial zoning, an increase in height. Actually, typically we would want to see at least 75% of the Zone 4 units actually built. As I mentioned, that's actually 281 units at this site. This site is only building 64% of the total units. We're giving them a waiver to build actually less units in this case because they're affordable. And then some of the tandem parking elements also require a waiver. Tandem parking is where basically one car is parked behind another. So the only way you can get the car out in front is if you move the car in the back. So it's 2 parking spaces, but in less total area. And so no, it's not illegal if you get a waiver or under certain affordability standards. So many of you said, let's just tell the state to pound sand. No way, we're not doing it. Sorry. Well, our City of Santa Cruz friends were a little bit ahead of us on this journey have tried that. They tried that with the 831 Water Street project. This is at Water Street in North Branson 40. On October 2021, the Santa Cruz City Council rejected this project. They said, we don't like it. They found a couple of reasons. Having to do with the stability of the slope, with the way the low-income units were distributed through these actually two buildings here. So they denied it. A group called YIMBY threatened to sue them under state housing laws. Furthermore, the project would be applied under SB 35. That's the streamlining provision in state code, which basically reduces the amount of consideration that the council could give it. And so they ended up approving it just 2 months later. Let's talk a little bit about why here, the RENA allocations, how the zoning map is developed. So a lot of you have reached out and said, we need housing in our community, but by all means, it's the wrong place. Put it downtown, put it in Santa Cruz, Capitola, Watsonville. The reality is the state has said all of the above. Each one of us in separate jurisdiction, the cities and the unincorporated county, we've all received allocations for the plan for new housing in the thousands. City of Scotts Valley, 1,220 units they had a plan for. City of Santa Cruz, 3,736. Unincorporated Santa Cruz County, 4,634. City of Capitola, 1,336, which is significant because they only have about 10,000 houses per day. City of Watsonville, 2,053 units. And then when we talk about the unincorporated county, our geography is pretty challenging. We've got a lot of mountains and trees out there, and then we've got the coast. We're sandwiched in between the two. And so what you see on this map, we have what's called the urban services line in the unincorporated area. It's that blue line, and that's basically where sewer is available. There's no sewer line up the San Lorenzo Valley. It's pretty problematic. It runs on septic and wells, and the two next to each other, not a good mix. That's why it's so darn expensive to build in the unincorporated area today out in the mountains. So when we had to look for a place to put 4,634 units, we said it should probably be within the urban area, and it can't be the cities because they have their own number, and so we're really limited to this colored area here: Live Oak, Soquel, and Aptos. Not a large area. One of you reached out and said, well, actually, there's more than 4,634 units in your plan. It's more like 5,500, 6,000. I think it's 5,500. That's because we were required, again, by the state to plan for a buffer of 20%. So add, times 4,634 by 1.2, 5,500. And the fun part about working with the state is that while we submitted our housing plan on time, and they said, oh, we got to think about this. We're going to go over it for a few months. And, while we're thinking about it, you're out of compliance. So when we're out of compliance, because we don't have an approved housing element, the builder's remedy kicks in. And the builder's remedy means you can do whatever the hell you want. So that can put us in a good place either.
Can you say that slower?
Sure. So when you don't have an approved housing element that incorporates all of these units that I'm talking about, then the remedy for that is called the builder's remedy. That's sort of the stick that the state carries. And that basically means that people can submit, I know it sounds like we don't have a whole lot of rules, but talk about no rules when builder's remedy is in effect. I think Santa Monica went through this, and while they were in builder's remedy, they had something like 4,000 units proposed, basically overnight. When we're not in compliance. So you really want to be in compliance, you really have to plan for these units. And another question that's come my way is, well, what other projects are going on in the area? There are a number, come back to this slide, but there is one on Paul Sweet Road over by Dominican Hospital. This is 84 units on half an acre, and that is a builder's remedy project. It was submitted while we were out of compliance, and so that's a lot more units per acre than what we're seeing, right? That is 168 units per acre. So a lot of you have said, how could you let our state representatives do this? I just want to remind you, your state representatives work directly for you. They don't work for you through me. They work for you. John Laird, your state senator, and Don Addis, your state assembly member, are both on the ballot. If you don't like this, tell them. I certainly will communicate, what's happened here, one way or another. And I'm not going into that more, but again, they work directly for you too. And so you should let them know how you feel. What do I think our state representatives will do? Well, first of all, keep in mind that to change any state law, takes being passed in the Assembly. They're currently just finished this legislative year. It would have to be passed next year, and that means any change won't go into effect until January 2026. So it's extremely unlikely that any state law could be changed that would change the situation that we're talking about here. And do you guys really think that they didn't have some idea of what they were doing? Of course, they knew that this would be the impact. Exactly. Reach out to them, send a message, but I doubt, or it seems highly unlikely to me that state law would be changed so quickly because of this project. What I certainly will communicate, advocate, and I think is possible, because I've started to hear some feedback from Senator Laird and Assemblywoman Addis. Yeah, maybe this is a little extreme. And I think what they might do is say, well, if a community is actually meeting its housing goals, for perspective, in the last 8-year planning cycle, we got to about 80% of our goal. A lot of that was ADUs, actually. So ADUs are a big factor in solving this. And I do think there are ways to build housing that is gentler, more incremental, and ultimately led by the people who live in our community. And I'll continue to champion those. But anyway, we as a Santa Cruz County met 80% of our last housing goal. The city of Santa Cruz actually met theirs with all of that development that you hear about downtown. And so they, in particular, are interested in at least some kind of carrot for doing the right thing, for doing what the state asks. Right now it's all sticks. And so I think we could ultimately see some carrots instead, more sticks too, probably, but ultimately some carrots in our state legislation that says, if you've met your goals, you're not going to be kicked right into the builder's remedy. Maybe your planning cycle for housing goes from 8 years to 10 years. Maybe we can actually self-certify our housing element rather than waiting for the state to certify it. Or maybe we could actually get a lower housing allocation in the next cycle. Those are all things that I'll be proposing to our state legislators and where the discussion could go in a positive direction. Unfortunately, I doubt they'd influence this particular project. Okay, so let's get into some of the, I'm getting there, more than halfway through, we'll have plenty of time for questions. Let's get into the sort of resource allocation in the area. Now, I know traffic is terrible here. I absolutely avoid driving on Soquel Drive anytime between noon and 6 p.m. Now, of course, it's actually worse right now because we're in the process of making it better. And I know that's hard to believe, but we're basically doing everything we possibly can on the major routes. So Highway 1, Santa Cruz actually got one of the largest awards of state money for transportation in recent years. Little Santa Cruz County, we are 0.5% of the statewide population, got one of the largest state transportation grants to fix Highway 1 and Soquel Drive at the same time. And that's the construction you're seeing out there. And yes, I know fix is a relative term. Do as much as we could. And that means building an auxiliary lane on Highway 1 so that you'll be able to get on into Soquel Drive exit and go all the way to 41st without ever exiting. You want to merge with existing traffic. And that project is being extended, as of course you've seen now, phase 2 down to State Park Drive is underway and will be extended down to Freedom Boulevard, we hope. We're currently applying for money to build that segment through Avanos. At the same time, we're going to work on Soquel Drive. Most of the impact you've seen right now is from the sidewalk gap closures. So we just had a lot of holes in the sidewalk network. Those are being filled in. Sidewalks are extremely expensive, so we're happy for the state assistance. They're like $1 million a mile. And we're also putting in buffer and protected bike lanes, green bike lanes on Soquel Drive to try to make it safer for people to ride, as safe as possible. Wherever possible, we're doing fully protected with a barrier, the posts, and where the widths are just under regulation, just have sort of a foot or two of extra striping. We've also invested heavily in improving the bus network, and Soquel Drive is actually the best bus line in the county. It's most heavily used after the routes up to UCSC, and so that's why we have we're expanding to 15-minute service on Soquel Drive. Now, one thing that I do truly believe will make a difference through this area is the timed lights. We have a lot of lights really close together. Thurber, Winkle, Dover, Madison, and then you're at 41st. We're also looking at putting a right-hand turn lane from Soquel onto 41st. Yeah, and the last stop sign on Soquel Drive at Robertson Road is being replaced with a stoplight so that can also be timed. They'll all be actually know what the other one's doing so they can all turn green at the same time and traffic can actually move. So hopefully all these will make some difference. We are really doing everything we possibly can, at least on Soquel and the highway, and we'd love to hear any suggestions from Thurber as well. Okay, so let's talk about water.
Yeah, there you go.
We're concerned about water, and we are in an overdrafted basin. As pretty much as long as I've been working in local government and on these kinds of issues, we've been working to solve this problem. So over 12 years now. And we're actually there. This is a project across the street, the Advanced Water Purification Center, or Pure Water Soquel. They will be taking the water we used to treat twice and pump out to the ocean. Instead of sending it out to the ocean, it's going on under Soquel Avenue. There's a lot of the construction that you've seen over the recent years, and being pumped to this site at Chanticleer, where it's treated a number of times again. Same technology actually that's used for desalination is used on this. It's cheaper to do it on recycled water because there's just less salt in it. Once it's purified, it will be put into the aquifers, so diluted with existing water, and then can ultimately be drawn out by Soquel Creek Water District for customers in the future. That will produce 1.3 million gallons a day of water. For perspective, the project we're talking about will probably use about 9,000 gallons a day of water.
How does it help with the project?
Well, right now our basically with all the actions we've taken over recent years, yes, we are a critically overdrafted basin, but we've stabilized. So the water level is not continuing to drop. We're stable. So we expect that once we start putting 1.3 million gallons a day of water into the basin, we might actually start to increase the water level. I think it's a pretty good bet that we'll increase the water level, because even with these kinds of projects, we're talking about 9,000 more gallons a day versus 1.3 million gallons going into the ground. And wait, there's more. Because when we had this discussion about water 10 years ago, the community said, first of all, we don't want desal, we'd rather see recycled water. That's what's happening. And furthermore, what about all that good water that flows out to the ocean in the winter when we have all that darn rain? Well, guess what? We're going to pump it into the aquifer too. Santa Cruz Water Department and Soquel Creek, which basically rely all on surface water, San Lorenzo and the North Coast streams, have formed an agreement, interties everything with Soquel Creek Water District, which is all wells, pumps it all out of the ground, which is why we have a critically overdrafted basin here. They're now working together, and they're going to take the excess water in the winter and pump it into the ground for storage and use later. And they are probably a year away from turning that on to production levels. They've done all the tests. We confirmed that the basin actually holds water when we pump water into it, that they can get it out effectively. And so between these two efforts, there is a good reason to believe we'll have a stable water source going forward. We are also requiring monitoring of large wells throughout the county so that we know, particularly some of the agriculture near the coast has aggravated this problem, and so we'll be keeping a closer eye on that. Let's talk about fire safety. A lot of you have raised the issue that just capacity for central fire, or whether or not fire is an issue in this area, and yeah, it is. Especially up here, Soquel Gardens, you're in the yellow area, moderate fire hazard severity zone. Down on the flat, it's not. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot of area in our county that is completely out of the fire hazard severity zones. We actually have the highest rate of building in the wildland urban interface of any county in the state. So yes, there's a lot of fire risk out there, but this site that we're talking about is outside of it. Again, that's why sites like these in the urban area are the ones where we said, hey, if we have to put 4,634 units in this county, we should probably put them outside of severe fire zones. I was asked, well, do we have enough capacity if Measure R fails and Central Fire doesn't get the money that they're asking for? Would this project be denied? No. Measure R is about resilience for Central Fire. It's about getting Soquel Station out of the floodplain so that they're capable of responding during disasters rather than being stuck in the station. It's about having larger stations that carry more, to hold more modern trucks. They do have enough equipment now, ladder trucks, to be able to respond to a fire in a 5-story building. Another question that came up is, will there be on-site security? I do not have a firm answer on that yet, but I imagine that the 2 on-site managers would be considered the frontline defense there. And of course, our sheriff's department. The sheriff's center is right across the highway. A couple last words, then I'll start taking questions. Guys, I know you probably can't believe this, but it could be worse. It could be a lot worse. This, on the left, is the first rendering I've seen of the 41st and Soquel project. 5 stories above parking, so 6 stories in total. On 2.7 acres, 289 units. It's 107 units per acre. This project is 28.7 units per acre. They're not building over the green space. They could. They could pipe that whole green space just as it's piped below Soquel Drive and up by Benson. You could pipe it, just build right over it. Also, I would venture a guess, the reason we're seeing a project of this size on this site has as much to do about economics, right? So really, right, all we're seeing right now proposed in our county are 100% affordable housing projects and townhome developments. And that's just because of the economics. The kind of construction you see here on the left is actually pretty expensive, with a podium where you have to build a big concrete structure, and then you start building the plywood on top of that. That's expensive. And so this project really avoids building a podium because of this unit count. They're doing tough under parking, which is cheaper, and a lot of surface parking. 41st and Soquel, it'll all be under the building. So this is kind of actually an economic sweet spot that's getting us to this point. And let's just say, in theory, that we could stop the project. I don't see a way to do that. Let's just say we could. 10 years from now, it would come back a lot bigger. Rooms were packed just like this to oppose the Nissan dealership. I think probably some people might wish the Nissan dealership went in. And so, in any case, the Nissan dealership failed on its own, and here we are today. But in any case, just to provide a little perspective. Again, 500 plus units that could potentially go on the site. All right, so again, The current application has been deemed incomplete. We're still waiting for the traffic impact analysis. We're still waiting for a review of the biotic report, for the CEQA analysis, the Environmental Quality Act analysis. And we don't expect a complete application until at least the end of the year, possibly later. Once we have a complete application, this will go to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. And then if it's appealed, it would go to the Board of Supervisors, where I would vote on it. Now even that, say, well, it's not automatically go to the Board of Supervisors. 41st and Soquel is applying under a state law, ministerial approval process. Ministerial means no discretionary review required. Not the Planning Commission, not the Board of Supervisors. If it meets the rules, it shall be approved. Well, there is a point in having this meeting, and we're actually to the point, which is, well, first of all, I'll say my commitment was just to hear any feedback you have on ways to make this project better. Now, I just want to say, we're getting to questions, and because we're going to be forming a queue for questions, think about getting up. We only have one mic, so we can't run our hands to you guys. My commitment to you are to do whatever is possible to improve this project. To communicate with you every time there are any updates that we receive about the project. To use any part impact fees that we have directly in this area with a focus on Lincoln Park. To design and propose a permanent parking program for Live Oak, because I know that parking overflow is an issue. And to request that our state representatives to improve our housing laws. And with that, I'm open to any questions, suggestions.